Hi, and welcome to Ask the Manager. We have another Shrewsbury resident here today who's very involved in the town and commits so much time that we have Tom Kennedy with us. And most of you know Tom from the school department. He was Director of Human Resources. He also is the Director of Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services. Am I giving it the right title?
No, Chair of the Board of Directors.
Well, I just can't even get the title straight. And you are Chair of the Retirement Board. You're an HR consultant. He's also involved with St. Mary's Board.
School Advisory Board.
Mm-hmm. And probably more, but I don't have any more room on my page for that. So, but thank you for being here, Tom, and we're glad to have you in our town and so involved.
Well, thank you, and nice to be here with both you and Kevin. And yeah, I've been retired now from the schools for 6 years, but my wife and I, we've been residents of town for 31 years and raised our daughter here, and she went through the schools and now's off in her own career.
It's amazing.
It is, time goes by.
So 31 years ago?
That's right, yeah. I grew up in Worcester, and my memories of Shrewsbury were at this time of year in the summer, coming to Tacit Beach to swim and going to the amusement park at White City, and obviously accompanying my dad to Spags.
Oh, definitely.
And then I went to the Red School for high school at St. John's.
You did?
Yes, yeah.
And you stayed loyal to Shrewsbury Public Schools.
That's right. I still have done that. But some of the football games, I used to stay on one side for one half and the other half.
It gets a little confusing.
That's right. But we love the town. We're glad we moved here, and been a great atmosphere to raise a daughter, and I can't say enough about the town.
That's great. So we should get started, because I'm sure between you and I we have a few things to ask the manager.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things that's recently been publicized is that Lakeview Commons recently announced that for their retail end of it, they're at 100% occupancy as far as leases go. And now related to that is the property taxes. How does that work, Kevin, if some of the space was not leased? Are they still responsible for the full real estate taxes?
Yeah, when you deal with commercial properties, we normally do take a cash and income approach on it. So the fit out and tenancy of the buildings does impact the taxes. So we are certainly happy to see that they're 100% fit out. That eliminates any gray area or argument about what the value of the property is. And certainly it's obviously beneficial for the community in many ways. But yeah, on the taxation end, it is impacted by the amount of occupancy and the type of occupancy within those commercial spaces. Businesses, unlike residential property owners, do have the ability to appeal a tax assessment if there's several more nuances that they can appeal on versus a residential. Residential, basically, if you can see it, you have to tax it, but given the different types of uses within commercial structures, it does vary.
Okay. And is that similar case with the other properties on the Quinn 35, the apartments where? How did you get occupancy updates from them?
Yeah, we get occupancy updates from them. Sometimes, generally speaking, we use our best guess and have to negotiate with some residential property owners. Luckily in Shrewsbury, as everyone knows, normally we're at 100% occupancy on the residential side everywhere. But yeah, so whenever we went into the fiscal year 2019 budget process, we didn't assume 100% rent capacity at the Quinn 35, but we're cautiously optimistic that they'll get there pretty early in the year or midpoint of the year. So nice. That'll take that gray area out as well and get it up to full taxation.
Staying on that theme of the mixed use developments, Market Basket on the site of the former Edgemere Drive-In, that's going to have retail space, the supermarket, as well as apartments there, as well as that. Any update of how that's progressing?
Yeah, it is progressing. Since it's just the three of us here talking, I can just say that hopefully at the next Board of Selectmen's meeting, there'll be a memorandum of agreement that comes before the board with the developer. and to kind of lock into some basic responsibilities on both sides. You know, we're certainly not participating in the race to the bottom that you hear some communities get in with tax agreements and things like that. But it provides the stability for the developer. And we are moving rapidly forward with trying to get a Mass Works grant application in to support the development with state funding for roadway improvements there at Lake Street. That intersection is one of the tough choke points on Route 20, so we want to participate by using state funds to help the developer come in and make improvements to that intersection. So that grant is actually due the first week in August, so waiting for a little bit more information from the developer. There was a meeting earlier today and several meetings over the past few weeks with Mass DOT to make sure everyone can get behind this grant application, and we are presenting the right thing to the state, and hopefully we can get some funding for that.
Nice.
Yeah.
You had mentioned roadway construction. One of the more visible projects in town is the Main Street project from the center of town down to 290. You can see the drainage work going on. Some trees have come down recently. Can you give us an update and timeline of what the scope of the work is on that project?
So most of the scope of the work this summer is just drainage improvements and some widening and reconfiguration of the boundaries of the roadway, and then next year will be the final paving and things like that. So we're on schedule for this year. There have been some traffic backups whenever there was some significant work out near the middle of the road. Also moving all the utility poles back because the road is going to have sidewalks now, which is great, and it'll meet Mass DOT standards and complete street standards. So we're doing all the dirty work, so to speak, the less pretty stuff as it relates to drainage, to make sure that the roadways sound and properly constructed, and the next summer will be we'll finalize everything.
So the road itself will pretty much stay the same width, but the extra space will be devoted to
That's right.
sidewalks.
Yeah, in some places the road will narrow a little bit. Up in front of St. John's, it's really a lot of pavement and wide, and that actually increases folks' speed and makes people drive around each other when they're making common turns. So we're looking to make some safety improvements on the roadway from that way and make it a consistent width the whole way from 290 up to the center.
Excuse me, speaking of sidewalks, why did the state not put sidewalks in on Route 9 when they did all that construction?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what analysis they did. I know it was a resurfacing, and normally they do come in and put sidewalks in. I know they would have to maintain them in the winter, or more than likely we would have to maintain them in the winter because we do a lot of that work down in the Lakeway Business District. But I'm not exactly sure, to be honest with you.
I imagine that, giving my take on it, there were never pedestrians on that part of Route 9. And in the last couple of years, there are more and more pedestrians. And I always worry that they're going to get hit because people, how they'll swerve to the side to get around, they're not going to realize that there's a pedestrian actually walking on the other side of that line. So it does concern me. But I'll bet when they were doing the planning, they didn't see pedestrians.
Yeah, we saw that several years ago when the homeless crisis was hit. In the state contracted with Days Inn to house people, and through Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services, we did a lot of work on that. In a lot of the residents, there's not much around there, so they'd be walking, and we were trying to get people to volunteer to pick them up, to bring them to the grocery store or to CVS, so they wouldn't
Just to
have
keep
to
them
be
safe. Yeah.
Because obviously, as we all know, those cars don't, they fly down Route 9.
Because between Oak and Lake Street, for some reason, there are more and more pedestrians now. It started with that homeless situation, and now it's extended where people are walking to work. We encourage people to walk, but we don't give them sidewalks to walk on.
Yeah, further down on Main Street, the joint venture between UMass, Reliant, and Shields, that they're open for business now, the surgical center, where that's a little bit different operation as far as a for-profit and non-profit. What does that do for property taxes, Kevin, for the the town?
So they are considered a for-profit, so they will be paying property taxes, both real estate and the personal property tax that we can levy on commercial personal property. So, I mean, and that is, I'll call it a modest-looking building. You know, it's not like a center city skyscraper, but the value of that, given the use, is phenomenal. Somewhere around $30 million. With the construction materials, building itself, and then the personal property and equipment within the building. But it is a for-profit entity, and it will remain that way, so mainly through the lead ownership of Shields. So that's a good thing for us.
All right. And that personal property gets valued every year, just like the real estate tax does?
Same rate, same amount, same value.
And it ended up being ultimately a better situation for the residents, because the residents that abut that property were so concerned
About the hotel.
that the hotel was going in.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a clean business that, you know, at the end of the day, the traffic stops.
Mm-hmm.
Just at the other end of Main Street, we've got the Lyman Farms project, the over 55 housing.
Mm-hmm.
I heard recently that I think there's going to be 26 units, 13 duplexes,
Correct.
that it's going to be septic system. Kevin, as a town, when a developer comes in, what goes into that decision-making of whether the development is tied to the town sewer system or they're required to go septic?
Well, the simple answer to that is if it's in our needs district. So we have a wastewater permit that defines any areas where we're allowed to add additional properties onto sewer. And it's somewhat limited. This property was not within the needs area, so therefore the developer was required to produce and maintain a septic system. So it is really based upon that comprehensive permit that we have with the state. It's based on our ability to, send the appropriate amount of effluent over to the Westboro treatment plant. There had been some concern in the past that if we sewered Route 20, then we would be kind of opening ourselves up to, since that sewage is going to flow over to the city of Worcester, that we'd be opening ourselves up for more development within other parts of the community. But that needs district will remain unchanged, so it's really a geographic-based district that makes the determination of whether we can support the
For the water, will that be regular town water that they
that
will
will
access?
be, yep,
Yep.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, as far as I know, yes.
Okay. One of the pieces in our neighborhood today was the collection day for the recycle. You hear nationally and internationally the concerns about the slowing demand, especially in China, for some of the recycled goods. As town manager, does that concern you that we as town residents might have to start looking at paying as the pay you throw for some of that?
I really am worried about that, to be honest with you. And we've historically in town negotiated our waste hauling agreements with the contractor to have the hauling aspect of recycling to be the only cost that the town incurs, and then the contractor in the private market takes the risk as to whether they can make money from certain materials or all materials, or if they have to pay money to dispose of certain materials. And that was normally at least a business that the hauler could relatively rely upon to break even if they had to pay to get rid of some but get money for some. But that no longer seems to be the case because that market is so limited. And what I think, what I've heard from our hauler is that in some instances they're being charged over $70 a ton to dispose of recycled materials that are rejected at the processing facility. And that's even going into this new fiscal year, still over $2 more per ton than it actually costs us to dispose of the tip trash at Wheelabrator. So compound all that, of course, by timing, our contract is up at the end of this fiscal year, next June, with our hauler. And uncertainty is never good for the the person that's entering into the contract, with the party that's uncertain. So I do think it'll have a significant impact on this next agreement. I'm considering a number of options, and we're looking at a lot of data. Our Recycling is actually from January through May or June, whenever I just looked at some numbers that were prepared by David Snowden in my office. Our recycling is down. Our tipping fees are up. So we are seeing a marginal impact, in the 5% or less than 5% range, but it's something that we need to take note of and see how it's going to impact us in the future.
Is that a symptom of all the pizza boxes no longer in
Well,
there?
I mean,
People eat a lot of pizza.
That's one of the symptoms, and we're trying to clarify what all the rules are so we can still divert things responsibly and properly, but not have some blanket rule that if it's A, then it can't be recycled. There are some nuances and take some education. So again, David Snowden in my office has really had the lead on solid waste collection in the last year, and he applied for, and the town received, because of his efforts, a $40,000 recycling IQ grant. So we'll use that to educate and really be hands-on out in the community and look at folks recycling and tag it and label it so we can educate folks this coming fall. So we're thankful for his work and excited about that effort, because it's going to be important for us as we go into this new contract renewal. But overall, as has been discussed, the pay-as-you-throw program does recoup some of the cost off of the general fund for our solid waste program, and it certainly was never formulated to cover the entire cost.
Sure.
But we're also taking a look at it now, since it's been in place since 2009, to see what the initial coverage of those revenues were as a percentage of the total cost, and what is it now, and is it time as we go into a new contract year and face these challenges to try to, I imagine we strayed away. I imagine the general fund supplements more now than it did in the past. I'd have to take a look at the numbers to make sure, but if it does, should we kind of reset that number through raising bag fees a little bit over the next few years and try to keep the program sustainable?
Yeah, so it's a concern everywhere then. It's you're not alone in that.
No, yeah, and working with E.L. Harvey, who's really nationally known for their recycling efforts, they have acres upon acres of baled paper over on their property that they just can't get rid of.
Really?
Hundreds of tons of material over there that they normally used to get rid of consistently, but they're having issues given these new challenges in the market. So, yeah, it is something that does concern me, and it takes a lot of resident support, which we've had in the past, and went through some bumps and bruises this winter as the market changed rapidly. So we're going to really use that IQ program to help educate folks this fall.
Nice. Well, congratulations for David
Yeah.
for taking the leadership in that. That's great. With it, staying within Town Hall, obviously the Board of Selectmen recently approved your reorganization plan for the Department of Public Works, and with the pending retirement soon of John Knipe, where do you stand as far as that division or department head for DPW? Any timeline of when you think that person might be in place?
We hope to have a DPW director in place by August 1st.
Oh.
We're really driving everything, all of our initial organizational changes for DPW off of John's retirement date, which is appropriate in many ways. We look to have the DPW director on board for August 1st, the highway division manager on board for August 6th, which would be the first working day after John retired, and looking to get the DPW business manager position on board for August 6th as well. Those positions really have to work in concert together, because some of John's responsibilities as highway superintendent will go to the new department head, which is the DPW director. Some of those responsibilities will go out to the business manager. That business manager position is really going to function or be responsible for all the back office functions of the Department of Public Works and all those divisions that fall within it. So it's really going to be an orchestrating type position for procurement and payroll and capital planning and financial controls and things like that related to all those. So we really need to get those three positions in place simultaneously or near simultaneously to make it all work.
So effectiveness and efficiency, it sounds like it's going to be a good operation.
Yeah, we
that,
hope. Yep.
How will it impact the rest of the department?
The rest of the other
Highway
aspects,
department and the
yeah.
other, how will those other workers,
Sure.
what will they feel for an impact?
Sure. So the laborers and mechanics will not really have much of an impact. Their job descriptions and duties will remain the same. Depending on if we promote from within for the highway division manager's position, if we did do that, then we'd have to backfill the working foreman position or, any other position from an internal candidate if it's within the highway department. So, that's something that we're considering as well, because we want everyone to be backfilled and successful as soon as possible. Winter is coming, as they say, and we have to do all that preparation. So depending on how the interview process goes, which it'll start this coming Monday actually, so we'll start moving down those lines and getting that all in place for.
Do you suppose Jack will want to plow this winter?
I think he might say no.
You think he'll go south?
I don't know. I think he'll stay away
What a
from the
relief.
snow.
Can you imagine having a snowstorm and being able to stay in?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got to be so foreign to him. And his retirement, everyone's talking about it as much as they talked about Dan Morgado's
Yeah, sure.
retirement.
That's
I
right.
mean, he's
Yeah.
been a cornerstone there.
Over
Sure
40
has.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, at the highway department, one of the perennial projects that I think is finally seeing fruition is the salt shed.
salt
That's
shed.
under construction now?
It
It
is.
should be the John Knight
Yeah,
salt
Yeah.
shed.
yeah, exactly. It's well underway. The wall break, it's a unique building, so the posts and the braces for the walls on both sides are now up. Old ones actually, torn down. It's being rebuilt right in the same footprint, and we managed our salt supply well, so we didn't have much, and we actually have a due date on the contract, believe it or not, by August 3rd, so we can make sure it's done under John. So
Now, some
yeah.
folks in the community might not have an appreciation for what it really means to have an efficient and a large enough salt shed. Want to touch on that of really what
Yeah,
it
sure.
does?
So we lock in volume pricing and are required to take a specified amount of material at the beginning of or throughout the course of any winter. So we have to, one, it's a I'll call it volatile because I can't think of anything else, but if you expose it to the elements, you lose your supply that you've purchased. It literally goes down the drain. But yeah, we have to have a big enough shed to be able to store, enough salt on hand to be able to handle multiple events. There has been years in the past where salt supplies there have been either issues throughout the course of a winter or just a lack of supply across the country where communities struggled and actually ran out of salt and had to buy more. Our practice as a town is always to fill up the salt shed every spring. We do that for two reasons. One, you never know when the first storm's going to happen in the fall. We all remember the snowstorm a few years ago of the early October 20s, right, that impacted Halloween. So you have to be ready for that. And normally it's a commodity, so prices normally rise every year. So if you can fill up on, when you're saving 50 cents a ton or so, it really adds up over the course of time. So yeah, it is important to have the right storage facility and an effective storage facility and manage the environment around it by keeping that salt and runoff and all that within the building.
And the big joke about the salt shed, of course, for anyone who hasn't heard us talk about it before, is that it would be budgeted for so many years, and that was our safety net. As soon as we needed more money, the salt shed got pushed to the next year. And it's been going on. It was like, yeah, you're going to do the salt shed, sure. And so this year it's actually happening.
It is, yep.
One of the other positions that's going to be new at Town Hall, and from a human resource perspective, I think much needed, is the human resources coordinator. I don't know how over the years the town manager and the assistant town manager have handled all those responsibilities with it, but you must be looking forward to.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to that. I mean, a lot of the organizational changes we're making is to get experts into the right positions, and the HR coordinator is just that. You know, we've had some interviews for that position. We have a great pool of candidates that I'm excited about. You know, and I've told each and every one of the people that we've interviewed, we're looking to at least lay the legal groundwork and framework for an HR system. Now, that's hard to believe for an organization that has over 250 employees just
Right.
on the municipal side. So that's our step first and foremost. But the other thing that I caution them about is, you know, as we move into this position, the town has been successful. We haven't had lawsuits. We have a good culture, you know, across the community or across the town hall and all the departments. So we need to make sure that this position doesn't become a bureaucratic regulator. It needs to be an enabler and help us find ways to continue to improve. Keep us in check when we need to keep in check. Bring consistency across all of our departments as far as human resources and personnel practices go. But don't inhibit things. So,
But meet the mandates.
yeah, you have to meet the mandates. It's a lot really scary if you would look at, you know, a lot of things that could have possibly gone wrong over the years that, again, luckily they haven't. But, you know, you do have to be careful. You know, new laws and regulations are coming out, you know, a lot over the past few weeks, whether it's, you know, additional time off for family members or surrounding the birth or adoption of a child, and, you know, paid sick leave. You know, everyone's entitled to at least 12 weeks, and there's an employer matching contribution. And a lot of time municipalities are exempt from those specific provisions, but we compete in the marketplace, the employment marketplace, with all those groups. So we have to stay on top of those trends, policies, laws, and requirements to stay competitive in the marketplace, if nothing else.
And we've talked about, could the school human resource department be blended and work with the town and the school side? And I'm sure you've discussed it, but what would you like to tell everybody?
Yeah, I
what are you,
think that-
crazy? You can't do
Yeah,
that.
it's the school is so busy
Right.
with all the different locations. Over the years, I would work closely with Dan Magado and his different department heads. When an issue would come up, they'd just call in, let's just talk this issue out. But I think the town is big enough that they really need the resources. One of the things I hope is happening, I know in the schools, across the state, there's a professional group of school HR people, and I hope that that same thing happens, where that HR coordinator can build up relationships instead of reinventing the wheel all the time. There's 351 communities, and not all of them will have HR, but over half of them would. So
Yeah, there is a Massachusetts Municipal Personnel, MMPA association that really has gotten its feet under itself in the last 5 years or so, and it's a good networking and collaborative group. So most of the candidates that we've spoken with have talked about their relationship with that group, so we're happy about that. Yeah.
Does the school department have written policies and procedures for everything?
yes.
And so the new HR director will have an awful lot of work to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are, I mean, the town does have personnel bylaws and also,
Right.
but it's
The bylaws are there, but a lot of the policies around,
implementation.
right.
Yep, could
Yeah,
be
I think
lacking.
consistency is the main word that we need to get across all the departments, whether
Right.
that's from how we post the position to how we deal with an employee concern or constraint. And
And
you
for
know,
everyone to know what calling in sick multiple times means, what, you know, there's just so many things. Once you know, get into it, you'll find. I know just from the departments I've worked in, writing policies can be ridiculously labor intensive. And if you can get other communities that have already done some of that, it's really
Yeah,
a big
and I'm a
help.
firm believer, it comes down to relationships with it. It's, as Kevin indicated, the less bureaucratic, but just as the department heads form relationships with their employees, the
Right.
HR coordinator needs to form relationships so people feel that it's an open, respectful environment, and that if someone's going to HR, it's not the feeling of, oh, someone's in trouble, they're being called on the carpet.
Right.
They're going there to discuss items that just might be too sensitive to talk to their department head about.
And a lot of things will be formalized because the town manager obviously had to handle a lot of issues, and now it'll be formalized with one person focused directly on that. So I think that's really a step forward.
Yeah, one of the things we saw on the school side throughout the state, we ended up hosting the school statewide group in Shrewsbury. It's such a central location. Our town hall, it's got the parking, the selectmen's room has got, I mean, people were just so thrilled to come to Shrewsbury for the meetings. We'd go to different locations and it was cramped style
Central.
with it.
We
But,
did that years ago with Worcester County Selectmen. We used to have to go to the west side, the east side, the north side, the south side. And finally I said, wouldn't you people prefer to just drive centrally and not have to take such a long trip? And it became very popular.
All right. Last week, Kevin, I know you had a couple of water issues to deal with, and I know the water treatment plan is getting closer and closer. What's the scheduled date for the valves to be turned on?
So we have to, clean out the new system and, prime it and prep it, and that will start later this summer in August and September. We look to be fully operational and using the new treatment plant by the end of October. Unfortunately, with just the installation of that, it doesn't flip the switch, and all the sediment and things that have built up in the system over the years doesn't go away. Over the past week, on the 4th of July, around 2:30 in the afternoon, you remember numbers that hit you. We had a water break on North Street and water main break on North Street, and it was in our high pressure zone. And when there's a break in the high pressure zone, it really moves the water. Water follows the path of least resistance, so it's gushing out of that. Created a lot of turbulence throughout the system. And that was only compounded by what I'll call an illicit opening of a fire hydrant somewhere in the community on Thursday evening, Thursday night. Wasn't a town affiliated opening, wasn't a proper opening, and that was within our low pressure zone. And you have to be careful when you're opening a low pressure zone hydrant in order to open it slowly and close it slowly as to not disrupt the system. Unfortunately, that person or whoever did it didn't know that, and that caused sediment to move around in our low pressure system. So we have 2/3 of our community essentially with sediment that's in the water, and it's hard to understand, but you appreciate it whenever the guys are struggling and the office workers are struggling as much as you are trying to fix the problem and have the same concerns and live in the community. But we can flush the mains out, but there's residual impacts that have to come out at the end user, and those that are disproportionately impacted, we try to go to their house, take their meter off, open up the line, get everything cleared out. But it's frustrating because it's something that has to take its time. But you're right, the water treatment plant is the ultimate solution. It will have biological treatment to remove the manganese, which causes the sediment to build up in the lines. We will be laying out a thorough flushing plan to remove the sediment from the existing lines and flush it out of the system, over the months after we get the new treatment plant online. We're moving in that direction. Had a lot of conversation with folks over the past week, and October can't get here soon enough.
People must have been very frustrated because the message was it's okay to drink the water. No one's going to drink water with sediment, even if you tell us it's clean.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so it's got to be upsetting.
I appreciate that, and it's upsetting for us as well. We are trying to get it out of the system. We know folks have called in, and we're actually changing some phone system protocols because of our experience over the past week to allow more people to be queued up in our system and not just get pushed off into voicemail. But yeah, so we put out the message it's safe to drink because there's no bacterial contamination. You don't need to boil the water. It is, it's discolored and it's dirty, and yes, you wouldn't drink it. Yeah, we do know that, but it's, we can't say you have to boil it because boiling it is not going to clean it up either. So, it's frustrating and challenging. And I can promise everyone that we're working on it, and we don't want to have to receive the phone calls as much as everyone doesn't want to have to make the phone calls.
And we don't want to rush the summer, so as much as we would like to see October
That's
come,
right.
let's not rush the summer.
Yeah.
Are we fairly unique with this manganese problem in Shrewsbury for this part of the country, from what you can gather?
I don't know the answer to that question, how unique we are, whether it's something that's very unique to our aquifer system or not, but I know that is where it originates. You know, I honestly don't know that. I never
But
looked
we have
into that.
cutting-edge technology
Yep,
going into the
we
water
do.
treatment plant
Yeah.
for this.
Yeah, it's a biological living organism that will eat the manganese out of the water at proper, so we maintain proper pH levels to allow those organisms to live and grow and thrive and eat the manganese. And you know, so we're not treating with harsh chemicals and things like that. So we're moving in a good direction.
Good. One of the things I noticed a few weeks ago was that there was a study committee being formed to look at the parking situation in the center of town, which I mean, it's always been an issue with it. And what prompted that? Was that a grant that came
Yeah,
along for that?
we received a grant through the Massachusetts Downtown Initiative to review our parking concerns. They're going through the data collection phase of that and look to have some recommendations out to us. It's challenging. One of the best things about it, it identifies all the parking that is available, and you know, you look at it and you scratch your head and say, well, yeah, if you put all that together, it makes sense. But hopefully, it can bring some consistency to you know, signage. Look at other opportunities to add parking. You know, obviously, we all know from a parking study, we're not going to create 100 more parking spaces by, you know, snapping our fingers. That's not the intent. But, you know, which parking lots are available when, which are restricted, which aren't. How do we sign that? How do we make it as convenient for folks as possible to continue to use the town center and improve the town center from a business development standpoint?
Yeah, I'm sure the parking has had an impact on the library as well, because I'm sure people that really aren't going to the library but need to find a spot,
Have used
sidewalk,
it.
park at the library.
That's
and
right.
that impacts Ellen and her services.
That's
that can be
true.
developed.
Yep, it is
That's
true. Yep.
Yeah. One of the pieces I think sometimes as residents we take for granted, maybe in Shrewsbury, is Cellco. But you know, having our own power source equipment and you know, tied to that with the cable and the internet and the telephone. As a town manager, what is to being pretty self-sufficient in those areas? What does that mean to a town manager to have your own power generating source?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, it keeps town operations up and running because, you know, water pump stations, sewer pumping stations, the fire department, the police department all need power to operate. And when you get in the fire and police department, obviously it's easy to operate a generator and things like that. But when you start to think about, well, we need power at every radio site, you know, radio repeater site, and we need power at every water pump station. We need power at the water treatment plant. We need, you know, power at the sewer treatment plants. It really allows us to continue to function and allow the community to function, even if pockets are without power, because we certainly don't have generator backups at, you know, we have, you know, almost 30 sewer pump stations, and it's just not feasible given the location of some of them, and some of them just weren't constructed with that in mind. So from municipal operations, it's a huge benefit internally to us to provide basic public amenities and services in the times of storms and disasters. So, but then it's quality of life, right? That's what we all strive for in local government, to make sure that folks can have a high quality of life, and no one likes to be without power. And having happy residents and keeping the lights on and the cable up and you know, the internet flowing, so to speak, it's a wonderful asset to have. It's a very high quality of life. It's good to boast out in the community with my, you know, fellow managers whenever they're struggling with it. We always go to their aid, but you know, they all get frustrated that they can't be like us. So it's good to be us.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
and I think Cellco does a nice job of marketing on when you get the insert. They always show the price per kilowatt of Cellco on the electric bill versus some of the private utilities that other communities are having. So not only do we have the efficiency of the service, but there's a nice price point that we get as
Yeah.
consumers.
You
as
have a
well.
really focused mission, right? So your customer base is a critical part of your mission, and not that the major investor-owned utilities don't worry about their prices, but I would say it's not part of their mission. You know, part of Cellco's mission is to maintain that cost and the price point for the community, and that's just a different focus than most, you know, investor-owned for-profit, you know, utilities. So we own much more of the system as a whole, from generation to end user, than those investor-owned utilities do as well. You know, National Grid buys all their power from the market. We actually own stake in different production facilities, so we have more of a, you know, I don't know what the beginning of an electrical process is called, but whatever it is, to the use of it at the end. So,
And how will recently there was groundbreaking or ribbon cutting for the solar farm.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
yeah, it's
for
very
Shrewsbury.
exciting, and you know, tip of the hat to Mike Hale. Third time's the charm on that project. He got it done when I know the former manager said good luck to him. So, you know, he made it come through. You know, really. I think it's interesting that in the end it was Cellco that did it, right? Because Cellco's always provided for the community. We've always done things on our own, and in the end it took Cellco to bring it to fruition with a little bit of support from MWIC, which is a consortium of Massachusetts municipal electric providers. So yeah, I mean, it's a large facility. It's in a great sunny location up on top of the landfill that was never going to be otherwise developed. It's a good use. We had a good event out there.
Does that
a couple weeks
interfere with
ago.
Michael's golf course on top of those? Michael always wanted a golf course over there.
Yeah, I think we have to put that on hold.
You know, before we get too far along in the show, which we're almost done, it's been a year since our
That's
town
right.
manager has come to us. And if you notice today, I've been paying attention. He keeps saying us and we, and you've transitioned from being the new kid to us and we. And it sounds good, and it is good.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody's happy
I think so.
that you're here. You've
Good,
been doing a
thank you.
great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I remember a year ago with it, I think it was Kevin's first week, the retirement board, we had a 7:30 meeting, and Kevin was making an effort to get to different boards and commissions, and there he was
Yep.
on Wednesday or Thursday morning, and
Yep.
walked in and introduced himself and listened to our agenda items, and so being visible with it, and it was very nice to,
He's no longer the new kid.
no, he certainly is not. But,
I'm sure I will be for quite a while, right?
And you've met, yeah, well, it took Dan, I think, 18 years. So.
Sure. Yeah.
You've met an awful lot of people.
Mhm.
You did that right at the beginning, but throughout the year you've met so many people. You've made an effort to get to all sorts of organizations and to speak and to get to know people. How is that different than some of the other places you've worked?
I can tell you that I've gone outside of the building to organizations and been asked to come and welcomed in to a lot of different outside organizations that hadn't really occurred in the past, which I think is great, because that means a lot of folks are interested to know what's going on in town hall and know that we can all work together. So that's a great thing. There's just a lot more formalized or informalized, in some level of formality, groups of people that meet in the community for a number of different things. It's probably something that community members don't think about, you know, whether it's, you know, historic commission or, you know, the senior men's club or, you know, the women's league of voters and things like that, that, you know, I haven't had the opportunity or didn't have the opportunity to talk with in other communities that I have been invited to or gone to this year has been great. So and you know, you have like the current events club that meets at the senior center, and just these little groups of people that come together as community members to talk it's interesting. So yeah, that's been exciting.
And now that you've been here for a year, any regrets?
No, none.
None?
Nope, not a single one.
You staying with us?
Yeah, we'll stay.
That's good.
I guess that, you know, you have to keep me maybe for 2 more years, so we'll see what happens.
All right, all right.
I want to thank Kevin too for putting my Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services hat on with Kevin's support and the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen. The contract between SYFS and the town was increased by $25,000 this year, and that couldn't have come at a better time as we move to our newer facility. And I know you're going to be visiting soon with Christine to take a look at that building, but it just gives us so much more space, a much more welcoming environment for our clients and our staff with it. So that is very, very much appreciated, and obviously all the town meeting members who voted to support that as well. It was wonderful.
Now that organization has changed over the years.
We
It
have.
started out to be a simple organization to do a specific task with specific goals,
That's right.
and it's just become the umbrella for everything.
We really have with it, and we continue to, a lot of people know about us, but some people know about us just in a very narrow focus with it. So we had a strategic plan that we worked on this past year, and one of it is that we've just got to continue to beat the drum to let people know the variety of issues that we do. One of the issues that came up recently through the senior center was how many grandparents right now are raising grandchildren, and maybe there's a need there for some support group, but trying to flush that information out is not simple. There's not a database that just has that. We're going to be working with the schools on that, but they've got their privacy issues they have to respect. But we know that that's an issue right now, that grandparents are trying the best they can. Occasionally we'll get a call, but if we could get a support group together, it would be wonderful to that, which nobody ever would have thought of 15, 20 years ago.
It's the end of the fiscal year. It's the beginning of the new fiscal year. How do we do?
Oh, we rounded out the fiscal year very well. Revenue met expectations or exceeded expectations, especially on the local receipts, exceeded expectations there. So another good, strong year. Tax collections, very, very high rate, over 98%. So things are really, really strong and really stable. And we look forward to moving into the next few months and doing some planning around revenues, pay as you throw, as we talked about earlier. And, we did pass the excise tax, and the Board of Selectmen signed at their meeting earlier this week, a host community agreement with a recreational retail marijuana facility. So, we'll have to discuss that and just try to plan for the future with what we see coming up, both with new revenues and changing expenditure requirements.
And you have 3 new finance committee members.
Yep.
And you'll have a meeting next week or in 2 weeks? The 21st, June 21st.
July.
July. We're in July already.
We're actually skipping July. I think we won't meet until August.
August.
Yeah.
So you have Jordan Rubin, Aaron Howard, and Mark Murray. Mark Murray was a school committee member, and Jordan was on the
Planning board or zoning
Board of Health.
Board of Health.
Board of Health.
Okay.
And so you have people that are coming in with an idea of what's been going on in town. They're not just coming in cold. They have a sense of what's been happening. So
and we hope to welcome each one of them individually into the manager's office in the next few weeks before that meeting to answer questions, provide some overview, and have a good conversation with them. And
do you still have an opening at the Board of Health?
or
did you fill it?
I'm interviewing the beginning of next week for it, but applications can still be submitted through the end of this week.
Okay.
Saw recently that the school building authority moved the Beal project to the schematic design phase. What does that actually mean?
That means we're moving really fast. We are in the schematic design phase. Unfortunately, you don't really get the liberty to wait until the MSBA actually gives you that designation. You have to rely upon your team. We have a great team with Lamoureux Pagano Associates as our architect and PMA as our owner's project manager. So we've continued moving. We're in schematic design phase. I saw, everyone could have seen at the Beal committee meeting on Tuesday, some matured building plans and site layouts. We will be seeking full funding approval from the MSBA by the end of October, which will require a local vote as well for a borrowing authorization and a ballot question on the November 6th election for a debt exclusion for that project. So great site. We're also waiting for the Senate to push through, which Senator Moore has been shepherding for us, the legislation for the Glavin Center.
Okay, the land transfer.
Yeah, the land transfer. Representative Kane got it through the House, and it's waiting for Senate approval and then on to the governor for signature, which is critical. We need the property to build the building on.
When do you anticipate that to happen?
Before July 31st, when they exit formal session.
So
Yeah.
there's a good chance that
Yeah,
it'll get done.
it's from if you listen to Jim Kane, who knows how those things work, he said it's in the right stack.
Oh,
So
good. Okay, good.
the stack that's moving, so it will get out of the Senate and get signed and on to the governor's desk for that land transfer.
And while the new building obviously is still a few years away, with it, you've formed a Beal reuse committee, and do they meet regularly now, or are they
They
just
met-
at infancy stage?
Yeah, they're still in their infancy stage, but they have met several times. Their initial charge was to make sure that there's no town, use for a town or school use for the property, and everyone's kind of said no. So they'll start to move into a planning. They're not going to come out with a single outcome for the property. It'll be probably a range of options with pros and cons, associated with each one, and then, the community and the marketplace will dictate what actually goes there. But there was a good conversation as far as that downtown parking study was, to consider what options may be for that site.
Nice.
With the farmer's market, which I assume it's successful,
It is.
there's limited restricted parking, is what I read in one of the Council on Aging papers.
Okay.
There's a group traveling and they're asking people to carpool and to find other ways to get to the senior center because parking's limited with the farmer's market. And what occurred to me is we're displacing the people at the senior center for the benefit of the farmer's market. And I was just wondering, is there any possible alternative location for next year for the farmer's market so that it doesn't interfere with the senior center?
Well, that trip is a one Wednesday throughout the entire life of the farmer's market. So it's only 1 week out of the year that there's a competing interest at that site. Everything else has been scheduled and reworked. Folks seem to like the town hall,
It's a good
given
spot.
given the ample parking. So hopefully, I don't know if that event can be rescheduled to not a Wednesday next year, but it seems to be the only major conflict that we have for this season.
If it had to be on a Wednesday, could they look at using especially in the summer, the Beal
The school or
parking
something.
lot? It's just, quarter of a mile down the street with it invisible for safety of cars that the police go by there normally. And but I've heard the same thing, that that's that one day it was
Yeah.
a competing interest. That,
I just would hate to have the purpose of the building conflict with the farmer's
Accessory
market.
use, yeah.
And not to interfere with the success of the farmer's market, but is there an alternative location that they could still have a good location with good parking, but it didn't interfere with the activities that are there?
one of the things, Kevin, I wanted to ask you, with being a town manager, it's 24/7 in many, many respects with it. What do you do in your life to have that work-life balance that is so critical?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of my time, wonderfully, is being with my kids. I have a 9-year-old and two daughters, 9 and 11. So they're into sports and dance. So a lot of the evenings throughout the normal part of the year, the school year, is taking them to soccer, picking them up for dance or whatever. So I certainly enjoyed that. I played soccer myself growing up, so watching them play is a lot of fun. They're a lot better than I ever was. So, then, normal summer activities, went away to the beach, at the beginning of last week for a day, and, we're planning a couple trips this summer. So I personally run when I can. I don't run as often as I used to, but I do enjoy that. So it's a good way to get away and stay healthy and relax and
Haven't
that's a
gotten
good
on the
thing.
lake.
Well, yeah, we have. So the other girls have kayaks. We don't have a boat or anything, but we do live near a lake that we get to quite often, and the girls go out there quite a bit on their kayaks and paddle around and enjoy that. So it's nice.
Yeah, it's obviously important
Yeah.
for everybody.
Yeah,
to,
it is.
to have that balance.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, and the summer's great. I get to leave most days around 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I make that a priority whenever you don't have evening meetings to get home, which is good. Always get up and get in here in the mornings, but then when I can leave around 4:30, 5 o'clock, we certainly do that in the
Yeah,
summer.
you still have several hours of daylight
Yeah, that's
left
it's
with
a good
this
thing.
time of year.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And we've had a bank robbery.
Yeah, we had a bank robbery at White City last weekend. Luckily, I haven't heard that we apprehended anyone, but didn't seem too concerned with concealing his identity, so it's only a matter of time.
Yeah.
So,
We have a new business that opened up in the center of town as well, in the old Shropshire shop. There's a
yep, country
called-
store.
Yeah, country store.
Yeah.
Oh,
that,
really?
yeah, just opened last week.
Yep.
Or that,
There's a grand opening coming up near the end of August for that, so
Mm.
we're
Nice.
excited
Yeah.
about that revitalization.
And the coyotes, any more issues?
No more issues, just the one.
Just that one terrible one.
Mhm. Yep.
And you know what I find interesting? We had a meeting once with the animal control people or whatever, environmental people, about coyotes years ago. And they spent the whole time trying to educate us about the coyotes and how we've misplaced them and how they don't cause harm to people. And all we've seen is on the news, some animal causing harm to either another animal or a person. And I heard on TV yesterday again a man talking about the coyotes, like, excuse me, do you realize that they're eating dogs? I don't know what the answer is, but I think we need to be sure we keep people safe.
yeah, we had some foxes in our neighborhood with it, and one evening heard the foxes making some noise, turned the outside light on, and the fox was sending a message to a coyote who was standing away, like, no, don't go after our.
Oh, yeah.
And they kind of had a standoff for about 15 minutes, but
Really?
the coyote ended up hitting the woods with it.
Really?
Yeah. So it.
Interesting.
Wow.
But I think, with all the developments everywhere with it, we've unfortunately, humans have taken over the space that foxes and coyotes and other wild animals looked at as their space.
And we sound like we're rinky-dink when we talk about coyotes and foxes. I just had the conversation last night with a cousin who lives in Alaska, and she lives in a very isolated area. And I asked her why she isn't afraid of or concerned about the bears. And then she went on to tell me how the bears, what they do when they maul the people, and I'm trying not to be judgmental, but excuse me, that was a bear that you were talking about.
Yeah.
She knew people that got killed,
Wow.
and then anyways, and we're worried about coyotes
All
and
right,
foxes, these little things, by comparison. But then again, there are bears in this area too.
That's right. That's right.
They just haven't come to Shrewsbury.
That's good.
So, we're out of time. Oh my,
All right.
we didn't get very far. Anyways, it was a very interesting hour.
Yeah,
Thanks
very-
for watching, and we'll see you next time.